As we've seen over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of discussion and speculation about Destiny 2 and how things are going to play out over the next year, and I totally understand that player sentiment at the minute is pretty low. With players having consumed pretty much everything that Renegades had to offer, most players are at max power, and so can also unlock all the rewards they want pretty quickly as well. That kind of puts us in a content drought at the same time that Bungie's communications have really slowed down for D2 as they focus on Marathon. So players are speculating Bungie have no roadmap because they don't know what to do, and that may or may not be true. We should just keep in mind that Bungie had said they're taking additional time to reshape the strategy for the long-term future of the Destiny franchise, which is obviously bigger than just reworking a few things in an expansion or whatever, right? And so that will explain some of the delay we're experiencing in Bungie actually coming back to us with a plan, although straight up some of it also revolves around Marathon. And best we can tell, this means that Bungie are rearranging the schedule they already have for D2 stuff. The long-term part of that obviously affects expansions, content that we're probably going to get later in 2026 now, as Bungie try and rework the bigger picture stuff, maybe the portal, gear tiers, and the power climb. But in terms of all of the seasonal stuff, which is still yet to release, it's obvious that Bungie are waiting until Marathon has dropped. Then beyond that, the current season calendar will kind of support the game up until whenever we get to the next expansion. So we're going to round up what that stuff is right here. If you already know everything about the game, everything that's coming, and yes, some stuff which we've spoken about previously, then it is what it is. But if you are looking forward to what's coming up in the spring, we'll outline absolutely everything that we currently know. So looking at the calendar they posted before Renegades, Guardian Games is set for March, and that still appears to be the case. In fact, it will drop in just a couple of weeks' time from now, where Bungie have added a couple of new weapons. So there are things like the Triple Laureate, that's a new aggressive frame stasis hand cannon, and there is the Beacon, which is a solar rapid-fire frame fusion rifle, and the return of Karu, which was the trace rifle we had last year. So those are the weapons, and Guardian Games is expected to drop on the 3rd of March, which was the original launch date for Shadow and Order. There are other new Guardian Games items. We can expect an armor set. There are emblems as well. Plus we'll have an event track and cosmetics and all of that. Hopefully, we'll see the return of the Rushdown game mode, as that was actually pretty fun. And given the fact that Guardian Games appears to be replacing Shadow and Order, since they're pushing that back according to reports, it seems quite likely we're going to hear about that officially in the next fortnight. Outside of Guardian Games, we do have both Iron Banner and Heavy Metal, which currently aren't scheduled, but do have a bunch of rewards linked to them, especially Iron Banner. There's a new weapon, Reghusk's Pledge, as well as cosmetic items that includes a shader called Iron Banana. As to why Bungie haven't scheduled an Iron Banner, it isn't really clear, but most players agree it's a bit of a waste. Plus there are folks who want to pick up the armor set that was featured last time. There are also unreleased event weapons like Action Item, that's a new Stasis Trace Rifle, and the Micro Mort, an Arc Precision Rocket Launcher, which are probably going to be a couple of the weapons featured for future Heavy Metal and Arms Week events. Bungie had scheduled Call to Arms, which was previously a sort of end-of-season event, although they've referred to this as mid-season now, and that's supposed to be coming in April. So interestingly, it may be that we get Call to Arms before Shadow and Order. As we've previewed before, Call to Arms has new rewards, like a new Flaming Helmet. As we can see here, this will be the competitive reward, or one of them. And then there are other cosmetic things like the Ride-Along Ram exotic Sparrow, Clinker-Built Bomber exotic ship, and Sublime Companionship ornament for Service of Luzaku. Outside of new rewards, we can probably expect that Call to Arms will function in a similar way to the last event. So chances are, we have Guardian Games in March, Call to Arms potentially still coming in April, and of course they're not groundbreaking, they're not going to change the game in any significant fashion, but it is at least more stuff to do for any folks who want to continue to log in on a weekly basis at the minute. And then, ultimately, we will arrive at Shadow and Order at some point. Rumours are saying that Shadow and Order will probably arrive in May, and this will subsequently kind of push the entire major release schedule for the year back, so it could be that an expansion will be later on in the summer this time, or even in the fall. With Bungie also opting to push Shadow and Order back alongside that. Whether we'll see significant improvements to the quality of Shadow and Order versus Ash and Iron isn't yet clear. Someone in my comment section referred to it as Ash and Iron 2, Houndish Boogaloo, the other day, which was a bit of a troll. But just like in Ash and Iron, there will be a key new game mode. Previously, this was Reclaim. Hopefully, the upcoming one will be a bit better, where we've seen teasers to potentially something along the lines of a Hive weapon foundry. Of course, Ash and Iron also zeroed in on a kind of legendary weapon in the form of the Wolfsbane exotic axe, which of course was thematically tied to Rise of Iron. And Shadow and Order references a weapon of shadowy legend, which could tie into this in a similar way to what the Wolfsbane did, right? Although we can only speculate as to what that could potentially be, Bungie have not confirmed an exotic mission or anything of that nature for Shadow and Order yet. But the story also speaks about the continuation of the Dredgen influence, kind of picking up from Renegades in some capacity, so it at least gives us sort of a thematic idea of what to expect here. Plus, Bungie had spoken about quality of life adjustments for this next major update, along the lines of being able to improve gear tiers, so if you had a tier 4 drop, particularly a weapon, you'd be able to bump it up to tier 5 through some kind of upgrade currency. Although it's not a major thing at this point, given that the majority of people playing a lot of Destiny are probably around about max power and already earning tier 5 loot right now, so. Other quality of life adjustments include further sandbox tuning. Bungie did outline that they had ability changes already planned for Shadow and Order before Renegades dropped, so there would theoretically be some kind of sandbox update with it. And Bungie had also indicated that they'd have ways to earn portal rewards from back in the Edge of Fate era, like your Texec or Bushido gear having a more reliable drop source at the very least, which could be linked to updated ciphers that they added in Renegades. And then beyond that, Bungie had spoken about a raid and dungeon style event, which of course don't appeal to all players, but some folks actually get pretty excited for them. So rumors suggested it could be actually encounters from older raids like Gowron and Insurrection Prime, which would be pretty cool. Although the specific encounters and the nature of this isn't confirmed, Bungie had officially said that their plan is to do this in the 4th major update of the year. So for those who've been wondering, this probably starts to give us an idea of how things are going to play out over the next few months. More than likely, Guardian Games and potentially another minor event or even something like Call to Arms before Shadow and Order, then Shadow and Order after April of 2026. And again, as a best case scenario, we'd be looking at an expansion in the summer, but given the nature of the timeline moving around, just keep in mind, it could be a bit later on. And so while the majority of it is not groundbreaking, and it kind of reruns what we experienced in the last few months around the Edge of Fate release, stuff is certainly coming. It's just unfortunate that we are looking at Bungie restructuring that roadmap. A minor positive that we've heard a little bit about, more widely regarding Destiny 2, is that apparently behind the scenes, with Marathon now being sort of finished and ready to go, they are pulling more devs back onto Destiny teams according to a couple of different reports. No major announcements about it, of course, but we know that Bungie's ideal situation is to support 2 live games. I think they still have an ambition for that. For most of us, however, there's just more of a practical reality question around whether they can really achieve that. Clearly there are some challenges, but we'll just have to wait and see what we get. An interesting question for you guys, but obviously while we can't expect things like the portal or the power climb to really be addressed or changed in any significant way before the next expansion, I'd love to know in the comments what would you most like to see in terms of general improvement to Destiny 2. I feel like, given that a lot of players don't like the long form progression of the power climb, that it's something that Bungie generally need to address to create something that engages players over a period of time, right? I would also love to see the portal refactored into the director for the game, and for older bits of content to become relevant in one form or another. While playing old expansions or raids, dungeons, all that kind of stuff, obviously it doesn't qualify as new content. There's a lot of stuff in Destiny that just isn't relevant right now, so I think there are some opportunities to deal with that. And it'll be interesting as well to see how Bungie handle things like gear tiering, as currently if all players are at max power, and if Bungie kind of move away from that power climb, with it being tied to reward tiers, who knows, maybe they'll go back to base difficulty of activities affecting it or something instead. But of course, as we list all these items, it's obvious to an extent why Bungie are pushing things back and have a lot of work on the table to really make D2 make sense in terms of systems again. So those are the big things I'd point at, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. So there we go, that's what we have to talk about if you've been wondering. If you enjoyed the video, a rating would very much help us out. Be sure as well to hit subscribe. I'll keep you posted with any news that we may get regarding these things in the coming weeks. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.